No one saw this coming as we have multiple surprising Leafs updates to go over today, including one that no one saw coming. We're going to break that down as well as discuss some big updates surrounding both Max Pacioretty and Jake McCabe as we are now just days away from the regular season ending and about a week away from the playoffs starting. So a ton to go over today, but before we get into it, if you're part of the 71% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. We're on the road to 16,000 subscribers. If you want to help us towards that goal as the playoffs are just around the corner, this is the place to be. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll be having content after every single game, videos, all these different things as per usual. This is the place to be. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a ton to go over today. A bunch of info dropped today surrounding injuries, surrounding lines, ahead of tomorrow's huge game against the Montreal Canadiens. It feels like another must-win game for this team. Florida won yesterday against the Red Wings, so take with that what you will. A ton to go over, and let's dive into the updated playoff odds here before we dive into a plethora of updates. So at the moment, you can see here that make the finals is 13%, make the third round is 25%, and make the second round is 57%. We're going to dive back into that in a minute because this matters as it pertains to the odds. Obviously, of the Leafs getting past the first round, the analytics have always favored the Leafs, but we have a bunch of injury updates, and this is a little bit scary, Darius. Now, there is some good news coming towards the end, so stay tuned till the end of the video. Jake McCabe is still missing from Leafs practice. David Kampf also is missing from Leafs practice, so both of those guys who we didn't really know whether they were playing or not, they're going to be out tomorrow. And Oliver Ekman-Larsson, in a bit of surprising fashion here, is also missing tomorrow night's game. He's not on the ice. He's injured. And Max Pacioretty and Yanni Hakanpää are taking part. So a ton of moving parts here. And as it pertains to the playoff odds, you need these guys to go far in the playoffs, especially with this injury, coming out of, at least the severity of the injury coming out of nowhere in OEL.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to need all these guys back for the playoffs. Now, the one thing that is a good sign is that Craig Berube came out and said that Jake McCabe, while he wasn't skating today, neither of the two guys, Jake McCabe or David Kampf, who were hurt last week, were skating with the team today, but David Kampf was on the ice before. So he was working on something. He was at least skating. Jake McCabe was not. But Craig Berube said that Jake McCabe will return before the regular season ends. So that's good news. He's going to play the playoffs. He should be back soon, but I guess he's just not ready to go yet. They haven't really said anything in terms of that as it pertains to David Kampf. So that could be a little bit concerning in terms of what the forward group looks like heading into the playoffs. Now, Max Pacioretty and Yanni Hakanpää are practicing with the main group today and taking line rushes. They can't play at the NHL level because of the salary cap. So they're not going to get into the game against the Montreal Canadiens or for the rest of the season. I do think Max Pacioretty does play in the playoffs, but he can't play until the end of the regular season because somebody would have to go on LTIR. And at that point, right now, that would be disastrous for the Leafs because obviously, maybe not so disastrous with David Kampf, maybe I don't know. We don't know what's going on with that. But if somebody was to go on LTR, they basically can't play for the entire first round, at least, if not more. So that would be a bit of a disaster. So just wait till the playoffs, get these guys in the lineup. So they won't be playing, but they're filling in right now. But OEL is out as well. I'm hoping that it's just, the bumps and bruises of the regular season. They're figuring just give this guy a rest. We're sure we can pick up points here. They're only going to play with and skate 5 defenders tomorrow night against the Montreal Canadiens. So should be an interesting game with that. I wonder if Mitch Marner takes a shift back there on defense. We've seen that in the past too, but should be a pretty interesting game against the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, and the game matters a lot for both sides. Obviously, the Canadiens, they kind of have a playoff spot locked up, but they're trying to, catch up and continue to climb up in the standings. And as the Leafs' perspective, we'll dive into the standings in a little bit. It's still pretty tight there in the Atlantic Division with the Lightning and the Florida to a degree. And to see OEL miss the game, like you mentioned, I don't know if you can take any. I mean, Montreal Canadiens are one of the hottest teams in the league, probably the hottest team in the league aside from the Blues since the Four Nations Cup, and they've been absolutely unbelievable. Obviously, the Blues have been a little bit hotter. And you look at the lines, it's very interesting because you still have the Nyes, Matthews, Marner, but Yarncroc stays in the second line. You have Bobby McMann in the third. He looked pretty ineffective there on the third line in last game, but regardless, you're sticking with those lines. Then Holmberg, Lawton, Lorentz. So they moved Lawton down to fourth line center in today's game in order to just move a bunch of things around. And they're moving Pontus Holmberg away from fourth line center. So Lawton now is down on the fourth line. And as if these changes couldn't get any bigger, you just have a complete blender of the lines. And it is, I don't love it. And it's very interesting to me that they're changing up this many lines and this many people in the lines with 2 or 3 games left in the season.
Yeah, absolute blender still, which is weird. I thought that they would probably try and solidify something at this point. Again, they are dealing with a bunch of injuries, so it makes sense in terms of the defense. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting to see what these five guys can do because they're missing a couple of their better defensemen. But in terms of the forward group, very interesting. And then again, like when you look at the second line, Yarncroke is still up there on the second line, which I think is weird. That happened last game. I thought McMahon has been playing really well with those two guys in Tavares and Nylander, and then he was moved off of that line last game. I thought he looked really good against Tampa Bay on the third line. He was moving his feet, he was throwing checks, all of that good stuff. But I feel like when the playoffs come, Yarncroke on the second line, are we sure about that? I'm not sure if that's the route we want to go, but I guess they're just experimenting with things, how the rest of the lineup kind of works with Yarncroke out of the equation from the bottom six. So, and again, they're dealing with the injury to David Kampf as well, but we're not sure if he's going to return in time for game one. But Lawton on the, at the center position there on the fourth line is also very interesting. He's been hovering between the third and the fourth line. Now he's back at the center position after I guess they figured maybe he's not good at center. Maybe we just rock him on the left wing there. So now he's back at center. I wonder if they're just trying to see what he has in a game against the Montreal Canadiens, who are a hot team, right? They're playing really good hockey right now and they're heading into the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out tomorrow night. And again, I was kind of hoping that they would have more of a solidified lineup at this point. It was looking like the first two lines were up until the last couple of games. Now they're in the blender again, so I'm a little concerned there. But obviously, the defense, we know, like it's absolutely in the blender. And the other thing to keep in mind too, Stolarz obviously. Does he play tomorrow, right? Is it him? Is it Wall? They're both playing this weekend. Who gets the first game? Who plays on the back-to-back? I think that's going to be interesting to see as well.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, this is a very interesting. Again, the big move was moving Lawton down to the fourth line. You pair that with all these injuries, and you look at the blue line. They're going to be running five. So Ben Tanev, Riley Carlo, and then Philip Myers. So I mean, Philip Myers being. Again, I mean, it's at a point now where we're seeing Yanni Hakanpää. Of course, if they were able to, they would play him and they would suit him up, but you can't without moving someone to the LTIR. Same with Pacioretty. And I think Pacioretty replaces someone in there, either Yarncroke or Nick Robertson once the playoffs come. But it's interesting that they're moving Cali up to the second line, even though one of them are going to be replaced. And maybe this is a sign that Nick Robertson is going to be the one who is replaced when it comes to playoff time in about a week or so. And as you look at some of the stats here of these guys that are missing, I mean, OEL's, he ended up putting together a decent year. Points-wise, obviously, he's not known necessarily as a fully offensive defenseman, but he's known to get his fair share of points. 4 goals, 25 assists for 29 points. And, of course, as you look at Jake McCabe, fairly similar. But McCabe is obviously a fantastic defender, better defender than OEL. But regardless of that, he is the guy, one of the most, probably the second most important defenseman. You could argue he's more important than Chris Tanev, depending on what side of the fence you are there. Missing him in the playoffs would have been devastating. Missing OEL, I don't think we're going to miss him in the playoffs, would have also been devastating. But that is the big piece out of today, is that they will be back before the regular season, which ends, which is very soon, by the way, and that they will be available for the playoffs. David Kampf, on the other hand, is a little bit interesting. He probably would have factored into the lineup in the playoffs if he was healthy, but maybe we're going to see an elevated role for, I mean, maybe Pontus Holmberg, or Pontus Holmberg gets put out. We still don't really know at this point. There's so many moving pieces, but sees that David Kampf, no update on that front, but Jake McCabe, like you mentioned earlier, having him back is the biggest update from today, and the one that actually matters the most of them all.
Yeah, exactly. They need him back in the lineup, and I think that's very good news. You want to see that he's going to be back and feeling good before the regular season ends. And one thing that I think is underrated with the Leafs so far this year that not too many people are talking about, it was a topic of conversation earlier in the year, they don't get a lot of offense from their defense, from the back end, right? And those are two guys that they're missing tomorrow night that do that, right? That have been doing that all season. Obviously not to a crazy degree or anything like that, like a 50-point, 60-point, 70-point defenseman or anything like that. But they have been guys who are chipping in for points here and there. And, the Leafs do not score goals from the back end. It's all the forwards. So, they need these guys back as well, especially in the playoffs, to at least have a chance get some shots on goal, maybe score from the point as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in a big game tomorrow. As again, you look at the playoff stats here, the projections, and we all know as Leafs fans, like, we don't take these to heart because no matter, I mean, the Leafs are favored almost every year to make the second round, and ultimately they don't. But there is any thoughts and insights from this? I mean, you're looking at it now, and again, the Leafs currently are 3 points ahead of the Lightning with 4 games remaining. I said 2 or 3 earlier. It feels like 2 or 3. There's 4 games left for the Leafs. They are 3 points ahead of the Lightning. It seems very likely at this point that they're going to be playing the Ottawa Senators. The Panthers are, of course, at 96 points here with the same amount of games left. So assuming they win 1 or 2 of these games, they lock themselves basically into that Atlantic spot. Any takeaways? They have a 6.1% chance to win the Cup, a 13% chance to make the finals, which when you actually put it is a pretty high chance. And obviously the advanced analytics favor the Leafs here. But even as it pertains to the Atlantic Division, it seems like with Florida's win yesterday that I'm kind of happy that Florida won, just because it seems now that the talk of the Leafs playing Florida in the first round unless they lose the Atlantic Division, bearing a collapse here is can be put to rest.
Yeah, I think, you can look at all the percentages that you want and all of this stuff. At the end of the day, you have to go out and win a round. We see it every year. Like you said, they're usually favorited, at least for the first round, at least the last couple of years. And they haven't gotten the job done for the majority of that time. So they have to go out and just win a round. Just focus on that. Let's not look at any of the percents, all that stuff. I do think that they have a good shot this year. That's for sure. Everyone is relatively healthy. Obviously, Matthews is dealing with that thing. Hopefully, the defensemen come back and they're healthy to play. But I do think they have a good shot to make at least the second round this year. But if they don't make the conference final or the Stanley Cup final, I still think that there's probably going to be some changes made. So it's gonna get pretty crazy here as we head into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a make or break here. I think they need to win the cup or at least get to the Stanley Cup Finals in order for fans to be somewhat happy with what we've seen, especially after years and years of failure in the playoffs. Well, that'll wrap it up. Let's let know what your thoughts are. Cheers.